Hi everyone, hope you're doing well. Welcome into the video today where we're going to talk about a big problem I see happening in my portfolio. These are some stocks that I have big exposure to and they've done previously really well for me, but I'm starting to see a few cracks, and for the first time ever really, I'm really considering addressing this risk and having to rebalance the portfolio to some of these big positions that I do have. And I'm going to talk to you today so you can see where my head is at, and also a bit of awareness for you guys, because I know some of you guys also have exposure to this sort of industry as well. Now, what the key thing is to do is to see this situation and adjust to the situation before everyone else does. That's sometimes where investing is kind of seeing where things are starting to go wrong, see where the cracks are, and protect yourself a little bit. And that's something I'm considering doing right now. And I've got to protect myself because this has big exposure to my portfolio. And I want my portfolio to do well. You know, in the last 3 years, I would say that my portfolio has probably been one of, if not the best performing stock market portfolio on YouTube, and especially probably the best UK stock market picker performance on YouTube. And I'd like that to continue. I don't want to get into a position where my portfolio falls behind, because I want to make sure I give you guys the best information I can. I want to come to you guys and say, look, why should you listen to me on the internet? Why should you waste your time listening to me? Well, if I back it up with a good track record, then it's like, well, I'm going to listen to this guy because he's got a good track record, and that's why it's key for me to still continue to perform in the market. So I'm going to talk to you about this today. If you do want to see any moves that I do make around the situation, I'll be posting them on Patreon. That's where I post my live buy and sell alerts and 2 exclusive videos a week. Right now, the summer sale is going on. If you do want to join the Discord, the private group, for £50 for the full year, 100 exclusive videos. If you do want to join, send me an email, jkinvesting@gmail.com. I think around about 10 of you guys have joined so far within the last 48 hours. I reckon that will probably get towards 100 by the end of the 2 weeks, and that's when it stops on the 15th of June, I believe it is. So if you do want to take advantage of it, now is your time, guys. But this all goes around this position and a couple of ones. DraftKings, my second largest position in the stock market, or potentially could it be rebalanced into a smaller position in the stock market portfolio? Potentially. Now, this has been a very good performer for the stock market portfolio. Only at the start of this year, this stock was a $50 stock, and we were clocking in 100% returns on DraftKings. And since then, the stock has fallen down pretty dramatic. But the news around DraftKings just keeps getting a little bit worse, and it's concerning. Like, it's not just like short-term news. This is longer-term news that will financially impact this stock. And what this also does is it affects other companies that I own, which is like Gaming Realms. They might even see a knock-on effect, and this one's done very well for us. Evolution, maybe one that's not actually done so well for us in the short term, but would affect them. And a relatively newer position, gambling.com. 4 stocks I have, this kind of sports betting, iGaming space. This is where there's a few issues starting to really show up, and especially in the US growth driver. The US growth driver of this online sports betting and US sports betting and iGaming, that is where the cracks are starting to happen. And that really, yesterday's news was the first time that went, I've got to really consider rebalancing the risk in this space. So what happened yesterday, you might have seen DraftKings was the most impacted, down around about 6% yesterday. Is that what happened is there was a late move in the Illinois lawmakers, and they approved another tax hike on sports betting platforms in their space. What they're going to do is, if I just scroll down a little bit here, so they passed a budget that included a tax of 25 cents per wager on the first 20 million online sports bet, and also 50 million after the first 20 million wagers, which is a major increase. Like, that's a big increase. That's going to affect the bottom line and the profitability for DraftKings in this space by quite a chunk. We've never seen someone so far in this space actually come up with the idea of actually putting the tax on per bet situation and increasing, which something like that will more than likely, because it goes up on the more bets, will expect, really affect someone like a DraftKings, for example, which is concerning. And this follows on nearly a year ago, where Illinois also increased their rate from 20% to 40%. So this is probably now the highest taxed state, where it's gone from 20 to 40, and now this on top is probably going to equal somewhere between another 10-20%. You're on a point of view where the Illinois tax rate is probably somewhere around 50 to 60%. Now, if you're getting taxed 50 to 60%, that makes it very hard to start dragging up the profitability, which is concerning. But there's also, this is the first thing where I've gone, okay, this is getting a little bit ridiculous now. But there's also been things on top that have added to the situation that made me nervous around this situation. And it's like this sort of greediness from these states are making me concerned, because I'm looking at the other states. So say someone like in New Jersey, which has historically been, in my opinion, the right model for a lot of these sports and iGaming states. They they start getting the ideas now where they've previously been on a tax rate from 13 to 15%, but then they go, okay, them guys are getting away with a 50% tax rate. Do we put our tax rate up? And that's, the whispers going on is like someone like in New Jersey now, they're now looking at a potential 25% tax rate. And then the next state looks and they go, well, they're doing 25% now. And then the next one goes to 30%, 40%, 50%. Where's the line for these tax rates? Because clearly they're getting ridiculous between New York, Illinois now. Has that set a precedent for very insane tax rates where you just get absolutely taxed and you can't make any profit? You saw the same thing in the MJ space. The MJ space was allowed, they allowed it in all these states, and then eventually they taxed it absolutely to crazy, where all these MJ companies are now unprofitable. And the thing that they brought it in was to capitalize from the black market, but everyone keeps going to the black market because these black market companies, they're not having to pay tax, and better off. We've seen it done before. Are we about to see exactly the same thing? The other issues that I have as well in this space is that when I look at like the lack of iGaming. So iGaming is even bigger than the sports betting for a lot of these companies. So a lot of people always talk about DraftKings and like sports betting. The big thing is actually iGaming, because with iGaming it's more profitable and you make more revenue. So we actually want to see this being increasing, but we're actually seeing no iGaming stakes come online. I don't think we saw any in 2024. I think 2023 was maybe the last time we had an iGaming stake. So we're not seeing any in 2024. We're not seeing in 2025, and more than likely we won't. There's a couple of states that keep getting rumored, but every time it looks like they're getting close, they're getting knocked back. 2 years without an iGaming state, it's big concerning, because this is the growth driver for them, the big growth driver for them, and we've only had 5 and states, and also we don't need like to see loads of states coming online, but like 1 a year, even a 2 in 1 year would be great, but we're not seeing any for 2 years, and it's concerning the lack of iGaming states that are actually coming online. And you could also say the likes of sports betting. There's still a couple of sports betting states coming through, but there's certainly a bit of a slowdown going on at the moment, which is not great. Now the problem is these are supposed to be the big growth drivers. So if you don't get the growth drivers coming in, that's a little bit concerning. Now the problem is that if DraftKings are going to be successful for the next 3, 4, 5 years, they need these states that they already have, but they need new states. Now the problem is at the moment, like companies like DraftKings at the moment, they're not getting the new states, and the states they currently have are getting more taxed to hell. So realistically, the profit isn't going to succeed if that's the situation. So it's a very concerning impact that's going on at the moment. The other thing you have is that what I liked about DraftKings is in this space they had a duopoly with Flutter, FanDuel. Now the problem is that these guys are not using their market share to the most effective way. So when this first came in, DraftKings said, "Oh, what we're going to do is we're going to start doing a subcharge," and then FanDuel came in and said, "We're not doing one." So then DraftKings had to drop it, and they didn't use their big market share to kind of go, "Hold on, Illinois, if you're going to do this, we're going to do things to backfire your tax rate, so we keep up our profitability." But DraftKings tried doing it, but Flutter aren't following through. And now because of Flutter, Illinois have this point of view where they go, we can get away with absolutely anything here. And then they keep hyping up the tax rate. So this isn't really a dig on DraftKings, it's more a dig on Flutter. But they're not using the duopoly to their power, which is also another concern that they have going on here at the moment. Now, the other issue is the black market. So the black market in the sports betting space is still absolutely thriving. If you to look at the bets that went on the Super Bowl last year, the illegal market still healthily increased. Now, the legal market still increased, but the fact that the illegal market is still increasing rapidly is a big concern. And the big concern is that these states are not like Illinois at the moment, aren't addressing the issue. Is like instead of focusing on making more from your illegal market by taxing them, why are you not pushing this black market into the legal market more? By letting these legal companies offer just as good odds because they're not getting taxed to death, making it harder for them to operate. Because you add half of that into your legal market, that's more than what you'll make from these tax increases. But these states just don't seem bothered. And the other thing that makes me nervous about some of these states and the fact they're trying to fleece these companies is that they're all doing it from the sports betting, but none of them are turning around and going to the iGaming and going, hold on, instead of increasing the taxes, why don't we allow iGaming? Because iGaming will bring more in than the sports betting, and then we tax the iGaming and we make even more money. But then they're not allowing the iGaming. So look at all these states, and these states just are making absolute bonkers decisions to me. It's not really DraftKings' fault at the end of the day that these states are making these decisions. It's not the likes of Game Realms and Evolutions and Gambling.com's fault that these states are making these horrible decisions where they're thinking, let's just keep taxing them to death. Because eventually it'll lead into where everyone floods into the black market and they don't make anything at all. But they're absolutely fleecing DraftKings. They're having to make them worse odds, so they're going into the black market. They're not allowing the iGaming, where DraftKings make some more money and they will make more money from it. Just horrendous decisions. And eventually it's like, well, it's a bit annoying because it's not exactly 100% DraftKings' fault, but it is affecting them ultimately. Now, the other thing as well is the contract market. So I don't know if you've seen the contract market, but basically it's not classed as actual sports bets because it's contracts, and they come out and say like, oh, we will say, oh, who's going to win the Super Bowl? Is it going to be the Patriots? Is it going to be the Philadelphia Eagles? Yes or no? And it's not classed as sports betting. Now, this isn't really affecting DraftKings market at the moment that they're in because people prefer to go to an actual betting platform and people use the likes of the parlays, for example, the iGaming. So it's not an issue in the likes of DraftKings like current market. But what it's kind of an issue of is that these guys are now allowed to go in all the markets that DraftKings aren't in. They can go into the whole 50 states, which is currently being allowed. Now, the issue I have with DraftKings, and this is probably DraftKings' issue, is like, at first they took the moral high ground, like, yeah, this isn't right. These companies here are making money from these contracts and not paying any taxes on it. It's not right. It won't be allowed in longer term. And they took the moral high ground. We're not entering this market. But I'm looking at them now thinking, hold on, all these things are going wrong for you. No one's backing you up. Even though some of these states are giving cease operating letters in here. At the moment, the the big dogs, the administration at the moment aren't really stopping it. There's a point where you go, yeah, you know what, might not be right doing this, but at the end of the day, you're a company. You're here to make money, guys. And with all the things that are going against you right now, sometimes you got to, go do what's right for your business. And the fact that they're not really pushing into this market, so it gives them access to the other 50 states, that's also a little bit concerning for me at the moment. So ultimately, when I come to make this video here, is that first of all, DraftKings is the one that's going to get impacted the most with currently the situations going on because they're not, there's no iGaming states coming on for them. They're getting the states taxed at the moment, and they haven't got those big surges in revenue and profit. But also, they're going to make less profit because they're getting taxed more. What that will lead to is someone like a Game Realms is that they won't be impacted as much, but obviously they're not getting the iGaming states to continue the growth as much. Something like an Evolution, they're not getting the iGaming states as well. Something like a gambling.com, they're currently not getting the states coming online to push the clients to these platforms like DraftKings and Flutter. But the other thing is like, if people are seeing these, the likes of DraftKings, for example, and they're seeing their odds deteriorate because they can't offer as good odds because of these taxes, and people go into the black market a lot more, then this affects someone like a gambling.com because who's going to go compare odds through gambling.com if people are going to the black market? because the odds are better. And then they aren't able to push their clients to the likes of DraftKings and FanDuel, for example, and it affects them. So previously, this has been a good space for me, and I've done really well, and I've got quite a bit, a bit of exposure in this space. But this is the first time for a while where I've just seen one after another of things going wrong and just not going their way. That I've got to go, at some point I've got to rebalance this risk where maybe they aren't getting these states that are coming online with iGaming and sports betting. They're getting taxed to absolute death. And what's going to thrive in this situation is the black market. And they're not going to do well in that situation. And it's the first time for a while where I've kind of gone, I've got DraftKings is, quite a big exposure here for me. There's a point where I've got to really look at that and think I've got to protect myself a little bit. And it won't be a situation where I still think there's major growth drivers here, so it's not something that I'll completely sell out of. But it's just having this big exposure at the moment because there's the cracks forming, and then you have to adjust to that risk. And that's the person that I'm kind of considering with the portfolio at the moment, anyway. So it's something I'm thinking of. Thought I'd make you aware of it, just what's going on in the situation at the moment. You never know. An iGame estate might come online, and it might make me feel a little bit better. But right now, there's been a lack of positives in the last 12, 18 months for these companies, and it just keeps adding up. And I'm just, balancing out to that risk now, really. So I hope you enjoyed the video, guys. Thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section as always as well, guys. And I'll see you in a bit.